Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Whisky Investment Podcast with VCL Vintners. I'm Alwynne Gwilt, whisky journalist, and I'm here today all the way up in Kent at the Copper Rivet Distillery. I'm super excited to be joined by head distiller Abhi Banik, who's going to be running us through a bit more about the history of the distillery and what really interesting things they do here. Abhi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Alwynne. Yeah.
It's so nice to actually be here in situ at the distillery itself, which we don't always get the opportunity to do, but it's such a beautiful site. For all of our listeners and viewers who've maybe not come across Copper Rivet and what you guys do here, can you give a little introduction to both yourself and the distillery?
Sure. Yes, so my name is Abhi Banik, Abhishek Banik, but everybody knows me as Abhi. My journey into whiskey was a bit of an accident in a way. Yep. So I come from India and I studied in India biotechnology. And while I was studying that, I studied industrial microbiology. So when I got into fermentation, that's why you see quite a few things we do in here is on fermentation. But I also, chemistry was quite interested me. So I then come across the brewing and distilling course in Heriot-Watt University.
Yeah, classic.
So I went there to study mainly the fermentation science from pharmaceutical point of view.
Okay.
But when I went and joined the course, I realized what it was, and it was much more fun than what I expected it to be.
More fun than pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. And so I was like, and then I completely got engrossed into the course. But first thing drew me into distillation was mainly gin, actually.
Okay.
So when I did my master's and I did my master's project, it was on gin distillation and about botanical flavor extractions. And I think that interest drew me into that we have a patented gin still now, which I worked on personally for 7 years when I started learning about distillations, and there is no gin still. But let's bring it back to whiskey, okay? So that's when it started. And whiskey, as you know, India is a big whiskey drinker. And so I come across whiskey in India as well. So when you're in Edinburgh, in pretty much heart of whiskey. So that's when all my learning on whiskey started.
Very practical learning, hands-on approach.
Very practical learning. Well, practical in the daytime and pretty much
impractical in
the evenings. So I remember being a student, so got a lot of help from Heriot-Watt, the students mainly, because Heriot-Watt, the graduate program draws mature students from different parts of the world who has already been in the industry. So that helped me hugely to understand more the passion and the science as well. I still remember a friend of mine who used to work for Asahi, helping me out with those biochemical reactions, understanding of that. I was like, my God. But a lot of help. And that is why it was great to study in Heriot-Watt International Center for Brewing and Distilling. So that brought me into whiskey. And then my interest toward research and all what carried me forward. So I worked in Heriot-Watt for a long time teaching distilling and doing knowledge transfer protocol projects, with my multiple smaller breweries and distilleries.
So that means them coming to you, learning
exactly
how to actually
exactly.
brew and distill.
Exactly. So they will come to the university saying that I have a small project, can you do any research on that and all? And at that time, Scottish government was funding 50% of that. So we were doing a lot of projects like that. And that was where I learned so much about flavor development, Not only that, also about practicalities, about distillations and distillery setups and all these things. So that is when I met the guys from Copper Rivet, so Steve and Matthew. So Stephen came up to Heriot-Watt University after discussing between their family for, I think, 10 years that they wanted to have a distillery. And finally, one of them said, right, we want to have a distillery, but we do not know
how do we actually do it? Because
I'm
sure those conversations happen all the time.
All the time,
people are
exactly.
like, oh, I should start a distillery. And then you're like, wait, how do I actually do this? It's a different kettle of
then
fish.
Stephen said, right, you know what? I'm going to find out where to find a distiller. So he went and checked. ICBT came up saying that, they produce brewers and distillers. They're the university, only one in the UK. So he traveled up there, and I was introduced at the time saying that. And then that's 2012. So that's how I was introduced into the a business or the idea, feasibility study, all started. So I started working with Matthew, Bob, and Stephen since 2013.
Wow,
so that's a long time.
A long time, yeah, 13 years, amazing. And so you were really at the very beginning of what would become the Copper Rivet Distillery.
Yes, I think, I mean, from when it started taking the structure.
Yes.
Yes, I was, before that, it was all about their passion of bringing this place or creating something like this.
Yeah.
Yes, so I was quite lucky, touch wood still, being lucky, that I was brought into the business from the start.
That's super interesting, and what a way into the whiskey industry as well. We are sitting in a really historic place here at the Copper Rivet Distillery in Kent. Can you talk a little bit more about why the owners decided they wanted to set up here and the significance of the building as well?
Yeah, so Matthew, Bob, and Stephen, they're local. So Matthew and Stephen both were born and grown up in Medway. So they wanted to, what you call, champion their city, their town, their place of they're born. So this is where they were looking for somewhere local to set up the distillery. So when I was doing the process designs and all these things, so one question Matthew asked, I remember, so because we wanted to make our own alcohol.
Okay.
So it has to be grain to glass process.
Yeah,
so
which is super unusual.
Yes, it is very.
It's from the vodka or gin perspective.
Exactly.
Most people buy in already made. Yeah.
So it was a reason why we did it, because we wanted to stand out from the rest of the gins out there.
Yeah.
So, and this is why grain to glass, the provenance was very important.
Yeah.
So one question was, how tall do you need the building to be to fit the column to make you neutral?
Okay.
And I said, 10 meters.
10 meters.
And they were like, you just don't find a 10-meter tall building anywhere, do you?
Yeah, so, you're very casual. Just 10 meters. Yeah.
Well, that was with a sacrifice. I would have wanted a 20-meter. Anyway, so he said, okay, fine. So we looked for it several places for a long time. And one day, I think it's a fine afternoon, lovely places in Kent. So on a Sunday, Matthew took his family out to a castle called Upnor Castle, which is just on the other side of the river, where we are. And he is sitting on the garden having picnic and wondering, what is that red building on the other side? Now, we are in a very isolated area, right? Because you typically only come here if you've got boats. So next day, he came around to see what the building was. And then he saw the sign, it's for sale. So it was literally very lucky coincidence. He happened
to go to a picnic.
Exactly, happened to go to a Sunday picnic and then saw the building there. So, and then he called me. I think at the time I was in Edinburgh. Because I had a few other projects that was going on. So he said, I think it's time for you to come down. We found a building. So he shared it and I looked at it. Beautiful, magnificent building. The right height, exactly. You'll see that still's just snuck into in there. Literally the hybrid still that we use for our grain whiskies and neutral, and our column distilled single malt, just fits perfectly. 6 inches smaller than the height of the building. Yeah, so that is why we got the building. But it was a Grade 2 listed building. It's a Victorian building, and you can see in those days whatever they did. They did it with passion, and they had that artistic view of it, and something they wanted to last, because it's about their heritage they wanted to maintain. So it actually aligned with what the Matthew and Stephen wanted to do. Matthew, Stephen, and Bob wanted to do. So we were quite lucky to get this building, and this is why. The provenance-wise, we wanted to be in Kent, but I think it was sheer luck that we found this building.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, as you say, it fits the whole concept and the ethos from not only the heritage perspective, but there is an industrialization, of course, that comes with whiskey. And the whole shift in grain distillation, the fact you're doing that type of distillation here as well, which is fascinating. We'll talk a little bit about that. But has that helped you think the story of where you've come from and the origins? Because you have the element of heritage despite being a new distillery.
It has, hugely. So it has helped us actually for us to recognize what we stand for as well. So for us, we wanted to be provenance, but now also we stand for local craftsmanship. And when you see at the building, it is very difficult to associate building and craftsmanship. But you can see that, you can see the pointed brickworks outside, the arches that is there. Yeah. When we have exact same building inverted down underneath this, that was the architectural thing, the engineering thing to support the weight of this building. Yeah. So these things all motivated us so much more that we actually found a lot of strength and support from being in here, which gave us the drive even more, I feel.
To build that dream of
exactly.
Wow, fascinating.
And every day, I think it's great to come to work, So it's like another day at paradise.
Place to work. Yeah,
kind of thing. So it has been truly blessing that we got this building as well, because then it gives us every day, every time you look at it, know our purpose.
Yeah. Amazing. And take us maybe a little bit on the journey. You obviously joined them at the early stages to start planning out and figuring out, what size stills could fit in this this building once you found it. You didn't start making whiskey straight away. So what was the plan there with the gin and the vodka and things like that?
So now, see, we are a multidisciplinary distillery, right? So we grow our grains with the farmers. But then initially when I started working with them is to doing the process design and all, to understand that what is the business feasibility wise, right? What the size it should be. So this is why we have got a brew house, which is 0.5 ton. Okay. But then we have got a wash still, which is 5,000 liters. So we do 2 brews to go into 1 wash distillation. Okay. So 1 fermentation, 1 wash distillation. Now that was designed in such a way that we have a sizable product, volume of product comes out per batch.
Right.
We're also, even though we are craft and all, we still need to understand that it has implications on the cost of it. And at the end of the day, customers should be able to afford to buy it. We call ourselves a trusted luxury, right? Okay. So that is why all the equipment, what the sizes are. Yeah. But yet I was designing without knowing where the distillery is going to be and all these things. So the final design came down after we got this building. So if you see all our equipment, they're all of a particular diameter, maximum diameter. Yeah. Because this being a grade 2 listed building, we couldn't take the roof off to put things down.
The stills in.
So everything had to come through one of those doorways. Wow. Okay. And I still remember one day when we bring the fermenters in, someone asked me, "Are you sure this is going to go through those doors?" And I was like, it will 100% go through those doors. It has been designed to go through, so we just need to find the right angle. So it was fun, but so that's happened. So we are very much purpose built, even though, we have this provenance and all these things, but I'm still very much, I like to control because I like to make our products with end in mind. So I already have an understanding what I want to create. And then what we do is we actually then analyze the whole process of making it. Right, okay. Okay, and then start from their end, right? Yeah. These are the things we have to do to achieve that. So this is how we forward plan and then come back and execute it. So this is why all the equipments are designed by us and then fabricated locally and put it together, because we want to have those control in there. So not only provenance, but we also wanted to have the control. Yeah. And you know what I said, craftsmanship. This building was not designed just on a scratch of paper. Yeah. It was meticulously put together, and we stands for that. So this building and us and our process and our product all complement each other. Yeah, they're all working together in that harmony. That's quite interesting, because I think maybe a lot of listeners or viewers won't necessarily think about that when they're buying a product, because so many distilleries have been around for so long that they're always, if they want to make changes, they're doing it almost the opposite way that you're doing it, because they have to then reconfigure what they already have. Whereas you got the opportunity to literally do it right from the beginning to decide. Have you been happy with all of your decisions, or have you made changes along the way as you've figured out what's worked best and what hasn't? We have learned from our mistakes, I would certainly say, and I think nobody in this world will say they've never made any mistakes. So so first thing we have learned is one of our bottlenecks was our wash still. Okay. So when I say our wash still is 5,000 liters, it is now 5,000 liters. When we started, it was 2.5. Right. Okay. We thought we'll be doing. We thought we will also doing wash distillations in the column in our hybrid still, but then we soon realized how the flavor implications was having onto it. Okay. So we quickly changed and made the still double in volume, double in size. But that expansion was kept in mind when we were designing it. Said that when we need to expand, we'll expand.
You already had the capability to do it.
Exactly.
You knew it would fit
Yes.
through the doorway.
Yeah, through the doorway, and also the heating and the cooling could handle that,
Yes.
the expansion. So those initial things were already done, but we just need to prepone. Prepone, is that a word? Okay. Bring forward our investment into that ring, into the ring to extend the wash till.
Yeah.
So things like that. That is one of them that we have done.
Where you've kind of shifted things up, and you started with a gin and a vodka.
Yes.
And you, as you said, you're making everything from scratch. So you're not buying in any neutral grain spirit. You're actually doing it with the grains, and they are local for the most part.
Yes. So because of the provenance part, from the start itself, we started working with local farmers.
Okay.
So we don't grow it ourselves.
Yes.
But we work with really trusted local farmers who are dotted around Kent, typically 10 or 20 miles from the distillery itself.
Garden of England, you've got lots of agriculture down here, of course.
And also the farmers say we do have a little bit of microclimate kind of thing, which actually gives us a better yield sometimes.
Okay.
So though the yield goes up and down every year, so we grow every year our wheat, barley, and rye, and the barley goes for malting for our malt, which you use for single malts. So all locally.
That's amazing to be able to. Was that again for you a huge or a key part of the process, was being able to know where the grains came from?
It is, because we all have looked into in our time about how grapes grows at different soil.
Yeah.
And we wanted to see that if there's an influence or not. But whatever it is, we wanted to make sure that whenever building Copper Rivet, as you said, we're building from scratch.
Yeah.
We could do a lot.
Yeah.
And we thought about all these things. So sustainability was always in our mind when we started. We wanted to have a very low food mile.
Yeah.
So, and working with local farmer gave us that option.
Yeah.
So that is why. And also, our spent grain goes back to the same farm or similar farmers.
Fantastic. So they reutilize it for cattle feed, for things like that in their ecosystem. Amazing.
We wanted to try that circular economy in there in as well. So that was from the start itself. We thought that we wanted to do. This is why I think provenance and working with local farmers was important.
Yeah. So you kind of built those foundations over the first couple of years, and in 2017, was it you did your first run for whiskey? For spirit for whiskey? Yeah.
Yes. So our gin was the first, Dockyard Gin was the first that we launched in 2016.
Yeah.
Then our Vela Vodka that we launched. But whiskey we started in 2017 because we wanted to get all our white spirits done.
Yeah.
That is not because they can bring revenue first, but to be frank, when I first met Stephen, Matthew, and Bob, when they were hijacking their dad's dream to retire into a gin distillery.
Okay.
It was meant to be a gin distillery, and then we said, right, we are being a gin distillery with being different in a way that we are doing our own neutral, so we can make vodka as well, right? With the same provenance element, with the same element of care. So that's why, and we said, right, we can make whiskey, but we wanted to concentrate what we wanted to make first anyway. So that's where Dockyard Gin and Vela Vodka, it's still what we are known for.
Yes, yeah.
And 2017, those two were actually set in stone, the recipes and everything. Then we said, right, now we can focus on making whiskey.
Yeah, amazing. So you did the first spirit runs, and is there any distillation differentiation with this? You obviously mentioned you have a column still, you have a pot still. So is it you doing two different styles of whiskey? What's your focus there?
So here I will talk a little bit about the whiskey philosophy, right, if I may. So how we do it, again, because we can, we being a young distillery, we can. While designing itself, what my thought was, I want to have different kinds of stills so that we can almost act like multiple different distillery, right? Creating different new makes, okay? Because for us, flavor creation is important. As I said, end in mind, right? So we don't rely much on cask, but we know the cask also gives flavor. So we keep that into consideration. But having different kind of new makes give us like a color palette when you're creating a composition, a painting.
You're not
right?
just reliant on that very end product down the line to shift it up. You can do it from the get-go.
From the get-go. So that is our plan. This is why we have got different stills, and this is why we have got different brew profiles. We have got different distillation profiles. We're creating distinctive different new makes. And then we typically employ mainly ex-bourbon and now mostly second fill ex-bourbon as well, because for us,
been using them.
Distillery character is more important. That we're building. And this is why having these stills helps us to create this distillery character, which has got link all through our product. If you think about Vela vodka, which is a multi-grain vodka, so it is mashed in together, where wheat, barley, rye, and malted barley forms the mash bill.
Super unusual, fascinating.
Exactly,
as well.
it's a complicated mash bill. Now that Vela vodka is then used to make dockyard gin, so it has got that mouthfeel and and our distillery character passed on to our gin as well. Which, when you try next to each other, you can see, oh, there is some similarity between these. And then if you now move forward, our grain whiskey has got the exact same mash bill as a Vela vodka.
Right, okay.
The only difference is the last distillation, right? So we created a completely new product at the last stage. So in that way, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create differentiations further down the line that you can have, yet you have kept those options from the start itself.
Yeah, so you've got that almost heart where it originates, and then you can branch out.
Exactly.
From
So we can do later stage differentiations for different products. You can do that, but it still carries on the distillery character all through its veins. You know, so that is why. So this is what was the whole idea was that we are having very simple starting, but yet controlled processes. And then we use individual processes to create different flavors. So our mashing in, our brew house is quite different. Like a brewery, we've got a mash conversion vessel where we do temperature profiling. And then Lauterton is only employed for the wort clarity wise, which impacts the flavor as well.
So for our listeners and for viewers, that is just to differentiate where that initial, I guess, base that you're going to utilize for the whiskey distillation is coming from. Generally speaking, in a whiskey distillery, we would have a Lauterton, which is a type of mash tun. But you're utilizing more of the historical brewing technology. So
we have the mash tun where we only do that is for temperature profiling. To create different kinds of sugars. Different kinds of proteins in there that will then help yeast to produce different flavor profiles. While in Lauterton, where distilleries typically only use Lautertons, where they will mash into the Lauterton and they will do temperature profiling by sparging in the sparge water
adding
temperature.
hot water temperatures.
For us, we do not do that. Lauterton is only used for separation of the sugary solution called the wort. But there, what we employ it is making the wort cloudy or clear. That has got flavor implications. How we say, green grass here, citrusy if it is clearer, nuttier if it is cloudier wort. That's implemented in there. Then we'd go to fermentation. We have 7-day long fermentation, right? So that help us to create
7-day versus most of the industry doing about 42 hours if they're lucky.
Yeah.
So huge differentiation in the fermentation as well.
Exactly. And also while we're doing the fermentation, few small nuances is there that we do all year round. For example, what's the temperature of the start? When do we put the yeast? How is the yeast activated? We have studied all these things has an implications on the flavor for us. So all these things we monitor, so we know. Now that's after fermentation is all flavor creation is almost done, other than secondary ones that happens in the wash still, right? As we know by Maillard reactions. So this is why we have got the wash still steam fired, which bigger surface areas as well. So we can we also do not ferment it completely. Leave some sugar for caramelization in the wash still. Inclined line arm for having a higher copper contact, making softer, fruitier. So fruity floral is the distillery character. And a very long, narrow condenser that's mainly to play with how warm you run your condenser for copper contact as well again. So all these things is designed in there so you can create different styles of new make.
So you have a huge amount of flexibility. So even if you come across and you make a decision, okay, this is what we like now, you have the capability to shift it, but you've already done the research along the way.
Exactly.
testing it out. Yeah. So what have we got in the glass in front of us? Because I'm desperate to give this a little smell.
Oh God, I'm desperate to have a sip.
Or a sip, yes, both of those.
So what we have in front of us is our signature single malt, which is from our malted barley.
Yeah.
I think for this variety, I need to check the bottle. So we are very clear on our bottle what barley has been used, which year it has been harvested.
Yeah.
This one focuses mainly on the subtle flavors that the malt and the barley has to give.
Okay.
So the brew profile is created in such a way that we retain some of those congeners, precursors of those congeners through the brewing process. We do not do second and third water because it draws tannins. We want fruity floral, not maltier notes to come.
Yeah.
7-day long fermentation. Yet first distillation in the wash still very slow. 5,000 liter wash distillation between 6 to 8 hours, right? But the spirit distillation is now, this is where it different is.
Yeah.
The spirit distillation is done in a hybrid still, which means a pot with a column on the top.
Yeah.
Pretty much like if you want to think about Lomond still.
I was going to say, it looks Loch Lomond have a similar, the old style Lomond still.
So old style Lomond still, they had got 4 plates, we have got 40 plates.
Okay.
What it does, it gives us, again, us being the control freaks, so what gives us the control on the congener that we're getting. So we reflux it.
And congener for our listeners.
The flavor compounds. So which I meticulously created till now is now the selection time.
Yeah.
What we need for this whiskey, as I said about with end in mind, right? So we created all these flavors, and then when distillations, we do a lot of refluxing so that we can separate the lighter acetone elements. Okay. Then I'll separate it out in the heads. Retain some for the heart because that develops into much more fruitier floral notes during maturation.
So the whole concept is capturing these lighter, more delicate, fruity notes.
And maintaining only the lighter, delicate flavors comes out.
Yes.
And the heavier one stays in the still.
Okay. Yeah.
And that gets cut and put it into the faints.
Used in the future batch.
And the future batch again. This is why this one is...
It's very delicate.
Very delicate.
Very light. And how long, you don't really talk about how long specifically you mature.
It is all in the bottle as well. So people can see when it is distilled and when it's been disgorged.
Yeah.
So between 3 to 4 years.
Gosh, it's so elegant.
Thank you.
For something of that age, you would just absolutely never guess that it only had that long of maturation on it. So I'm going to have a sip, Abhi.
You must. I think you must. I must as well, sir.
Yeah, that is exceptionally delicate. But there's so much pear and soft fruits, floral notes. That's amazing. Like, I cannot believe that's only had that amount of maturation. And I think that is testament to the work and the time and energy that you spend in all the research in the lead up to that. Because I bet if I gave that to anybody blind, they would say that's had at least 10, 12 years of maturation. So absolutely.
And second fill eggs bourbon kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So impact of the cask is also very minimal in this.
Yeah, it is. It's not standing out. It's not. There's no tannins.
So this is what we also do. And when we are selecting the barrels for our releases, we select the one which is the palest.
Okay.
So we do almost opposite things that people would do.
You want that lighter style because that's the house style you're creating.
So as you can see, as you said, the pear, and also a little bit of green apple in there, and the citrus elements. That is purposefully created like this. So we retained all the other heavy congeners, the flavor molecules, down, so that you can uplift this. Sometimes. How this is the motivation of this was actually there was 2 things that motivated me to make this whiskey. The style is when we were in Scotland, I was drinking some of those very old Glengrants and all these things, which is very pale and all, and it had got this pear drops and a little bit of Parma violets and all this.
How do they keep that in there?
So I was like, God, those are the subtle flavors that the malt has to give. Right? And I was like, we need to do that. So because we had the hybrid still, I was like, right, that's what we need to be using to create that element. Another thing was being in Japan with my wife, and I'm going into this highballs. I love Japan. I love their highballs. But I was quite disappointed with some of the highballs. Few of them was being my first highballs I was having. And I was like, what are these whiskeys? Where are these amazing Japanese whiskeys?
Yeah.
But when you go to Japan, you don't always have highballs with those amazing whiskeys.
No, not at all.
Until you specify.
Yeah. It'll just be
you get one of those
standard, regular, even off a tap, whatever. Yeah.
I was like, so I said to my wife,
Pre-mixed, yep.
yeah, I was like, I'm going to make you a whiskey, which will be great for highball, very light citrus
What
and
a
all
wonderful
these things.
inspiration.
So I was like, so this is why I thought, I was like, this is the whole reason. So we took two inspirations. First of all, those really old whiskeys, which was very, very light, delicate, pushing the malt flavors out there.
Yeah.
When I say malt flavors, not malty flavors,
No,
but, you know,
but
the subtle
things
flavors
that they
malt
bring
has to
to
offer.
it.
Yeah, that. And then something that could be enjoyed as a highball.
Yeah.
So, but this is cracking if you just put some soda in it.
Good
and
ice,
just,
nice soda.
And it's
Perfect. That's
fantastic,
perfect for a summer's day. Well, I can imagine anybody coming down to visit the distillery on a gorgeous summer's day. It's a bit of a chillier spring day today, but come the summertime when the sun's shining on the boats, you can have a beautiful drink here and come and see the distillery. The distillery is open for tours, yes?
Distillery is open for tours, yes. Yeah,
Fantastic.
so we typically do tours on Fridays and Saturdays,
Yeah.
and we're looking to see if we can extend it on Sundays as well. So.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Abhi, it's been so fascinating getting a chance to hear more of the story, and obviously there's so much passion in everything you guys are doing. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really hope you get some people coming down, checking out the space, because it's clear that everything you're doing is obviously thought out and in a very meticulous way, but is the proof's in the pudding, right? So that's a beautiful product. So thank you so much for your time today and for running us through everything about the Copper Rivet Distillery. And I look forward to seeing more products and what comes of it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me in here. It was great speaking to you today. And
Absolutely.
speaking to hope the listeners find it useful, and maybe we'll see some of them at the distillery.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to raise a glass to you. Cheers, Abhi, to all
Thank
your
you.
hard work
Thank
and
you.
many years
Thanks a lot.
of research.
Cheers. And thanks to you guys too.